Hi, I'm Sandra.
And I'm Saya.
And you're listening to Let's Talk About It. In this episode, we're going to be debriefing on the whirlwind of a presidential debate that happened on Wednesday.
That debate was like nothing I've ever heard before because there was so much back and forth, there was name calling, and just generally it was chaos. What was supposed to be a battle of ideas descended into just a mess. Even though the candidates generally didn't stick to the topics at hand, much to the moderator, Mr. Wallace's chagrin, we're going to review how the debate went topic by topic.
So let's start with one of the biggest topics, COVID-19. Trump maintained his blame on China for the spread of the virus, not his incompetence, and referred to the virus as the China plague over and over again, while applauding himself for obtaining ventilators, PPE, and getting the vaccine prepared. When he was questioned about the date that the vaccine would be ready, Trump said that the head of the CDC was incorrect in saying that the vaccine would be ready by next summer. Because Trump is much smarter than the director of the CDC.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? Duh.
Yes.
But Trump maintained that the vaccine would be ready much sooner.
He's turning this issue, COVID, it's a public health crisis, into a political device that can serve him. It should be nonpartisan, it should be non-political, because people across all political beliefs, all across the country, are dying, and he's not taking action. Instead, he's just spreading this misinformation in order to help his campaign.
Exactly. And, Trump's literal words were, well, this is a political issue. I don't understand how you can turn a pandemic, a global pandemic, where 200,000, not in the world, but in one country, us, the U.S., people have died. How is that a political issue? Well, it's an issue that he has to get out. That's the only political thing I see about it. But this should not be treated like a political issue. He should put the lives of Americans first. I just don't get it.
He has a really big responsibility now, and in every possible way, he's ruining it.
He should, just leave, leave.
I think that's the move. Speaking about leaving, this was one of his opponent, Biden's stronger sections. Because when talking about COVID, he spoke to the camera and really, tried to speak to Americans at home, people who have actually felt the impacts of this disease. In response to Trump's reckless or lack of policies, people might say, Biden spoke about how frontline workers are endangered further when reopening happens too quickly, and how we have to reallocate funding to help those who need it the most in these times.
I agree with you. Something that Biden did really, really well in this debate, and I really applaud him for, is his ability to just look at the camera, actually looking at us and addressing us. That was really strong, and I'm genuinely proud of him for doing that.
Totally agree.
He kind of sympathized with us, even if it's some type of ploy, I don't know. But he knew that that's something Trump cannot do. He physically cannot look at the camera, because I hope he's ashamed of himself.
Oh, he better be after that. Oh my God.
But yeah, he actually came up with real plans. It was reinvest in funding, just reinvest in reopening and stuff, and make it easier for people to actually reopen, and just don't say reopen, do it right now. Exactly. I won't give you money though, which is just
it's ridiculous.
But yeah, and then what Trump just had to say back to everything that Biden was saying was, well, you wouldn't have been able to do it. You wouldn't have been able to handle this, blah, blah, while he's actually bringing up real plans that could be implemented to relieve the effects of the pandemic.
Amazing.
But
yeah, I mean, the bar that Trump has set in terms of how he's dealt with this pandemic is very low. And the issues are very complex, but there are clear steps that medical professionals have said that we should have taken, that we can take in the future, and Trump just hasn't listened to them at all.
I feel like the first step in this should be to listen to the actual people dealing with this, the scientists,
exactly,
the actual medical professionals that are dealing with the patients.
Absolutely.
Totally. But moving on from this subject, we're going to be going to another one called Race and Violence in Our Cities. Thank you so much, Chris Wallace, for that amazing title. This category, just looking at the words themselves, not very promising, because he managed to group race and violence as one issue. and they framed the conversation using very coded language, associating people of color with violence. To start, Biden condemned how Trump has applauded white supremacist groups and has used force against peaceful protesters, as we've seen in Kenosha.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump responded by talking about how Biden won't use the words law enforcement and law and order in fear of losing his left support.
And in response to this, as Sandra, as you mentioned, it was good of Biden to really take a more moderate approach and try to appeal to the majority of people.
Very true.
Because he reasserted, even though he said this many times, Trump was like, you want to defund the police? He said, again, I do not want to defund the police. I actually want to do the opposite, because he was talking about the value of policing in communities and how these people are doing a lot of work. They deserve funding. Although I don't agree with that, as a voter, I can see what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Biden is better than Trump from my view, even if we don't agree on that
Very
issue.
true. And I think the convincing that has to happen now is really like on the right.
Totally.
Because the left, if you're a true leftist, you know that you have to settle. Because
Mm-hmm.
neither candidate is really for our values. There is no really left party.
Right.
Democratic Party is not left.
Agreed.
But yeah, so that's the convincing that needs to happen. And when like moderates and when conservatives, Republicans or whatever hear that, they're like, okay, wow, he's not gonna defund the police.
Right.
Okay,
right.
good. Which is like, I honestly applaud him once more for that.
Because he just needs to appeal to those people, as you said. He needs to win.
He needs to win. And if he doesn't, we're moving. Where are you gonna
Canada.
go?
Canada.
Yeah. No, not
It's
Canada.
so close.
I mean, I feel like we should go somewhere more exotic.
Exotic. Exotic. That sounds great. Okay, we'll talk more about that plan. But hopefully we won't have to move.
Hopefully.
But the next issue that they talked about was racial sensitivity training,
Ooh.
which is the first, and when I say the first, I mean the most basic step of many to addressing racism in our country. Because, of course, the way that people treat each other is really important, but we must also think about the larger institutions that maintain structures of racism and classism in our country.
Saya, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you know that training people to eliminate their racial biases is racist?
I mean, I learned that from Trump on Tuesday.
Yeah, he's like the best person ever to learn from,
Oh,
especially
absolutely.
about race.
Yep.
So Trump said, and I quote, I ended it because it's racist. He then went on to say, they were teaching people that our country is a horrible place. It's a racist place. And we're teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
So what Trump is trying to tell us, that if we teach students to treat each other with kindness, that's going to make them hate the United States. And that cannot happen. Okay?
No.
So I think what we should just do is tell them to hate people because of their skin color. I think that's actually the opposite. That's not racist.
Here comes another thing that I like to point back to is a difference between patriotism and just blind submission to your government. There has to be a difference. And there is a difference, actually. But a lot of quote-unquote patriots fail to realize that you can criticize your government while also being patriotic, or whatever they like to call themselves.
Exactly. Like, our country shouldn't be founded on notions of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
People know it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're able to talk about what the issues are, work to fix them, and move on from them, then we can actually create a place where more people feel comfortable and more people feel like they're able to say that they love where they live.
Mm-hmm. A big problem, especially in the education system, is the romanticization of American history, especially Columbus and the founding fathers, how they drafted up an amazing constitution that was rights for all. We lived happily ever after. Which is, no. No.
Miss Hunsberger's teaching us right now that what we see the Constitution as today, we see it as a representation of democracy.
Mm-hmm.
But she's having us read all these documents that's really showing us that the founders wanted to protect their interests as property.
Their property.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a video I watched today was saying that Thomas Jefferson originally wrote in the, was it Declaration of Independence? He said, yeah, it was. But he said inherent rights. But then that was changed to unalienable rights.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, so when you hear inherent, you hear oh, everyone has that.
Right.
These rights can't be denied. Every single person has these rights. They're basic. Right. Everyone has them. But when you think about unalienable, I can't say it.
Unalienable.
Yes. Thank you so much, Saya.
I had to think about it really hard.
But when you think about that, it's rights that can't be denied, but to certain people. And who they were writing that declaration to was to the white man.
Right. So
they were saying white men have unalienable. Can you say it?
Unalienable.
Thank you so much, Saya.
Of course.
But yeah. So I guess like coded language again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really something. Okay, moving on to another dreadful topic of the suburbs. So this was definitely my favorite. It was so hard to listen to Trump talk about this because, as we know, over and over again, he's repeated his rhetoric about the demise of the suburbs, and it's tied into racist, classist mentalities. He's trying to instill fear into a small portion of the white upper middle class about people of color moving into their communities and leading to more crime.
As Biden says, this is not the 1950s. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. And yeah, I really liked when he said that. And he also said the suburbs are integrated. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is a failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment, they're being flooded. They're being burned out. They're because of his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble. You'd think this happening in the suburbs, well, everywhere also, but we all know Trump cares more about the suburbs. You think this happening here would kind of make Trump want to like do something, actually implement real tangible plans, but doesn't. And that's how you know his intentions aren't to benefit the American people. His intentions are to keep power.
Exactly. And he knows that he can try and attract more people if he kind of capitalizes off of certain fears that people have. And in this case, and in many other cases, he's trying to capitalize on white people's fear of people of color and coming in and making their communities dangerous. Like this is rhetoric we heard, as Biden said, in the mid-1900s, and he is repeating it now to try and appeal to those sorts of people.
You're so right. Finally, moving on to what I would call Saya, I don't think they're ready for this. Well, if they watch, they already know what we're going to talk about. The worst moment of the night, or probably any debate that's happened, Trump's message to white supremacists and alt-right groups.
Not now.
Wallace called upon Trump to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we've seen in Kenosha and in Portland.
So there was a lot of back and forth. Trump tried to avoid this. He was trying to like kind of wiggle his way around the subject. And finally he was like, oh, what's the name? Just give me a name and I'll do it. And so Trump finally said, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what somebody's got to do. Something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
He managed to turn a conversation, a question really, about white supremacy and made it a left-wing problem.
Oh, that's amazing.
I don't understand that.
That's phenomenal.
He never condemned it at all.
He doesn't want to condemn the...
Because he is a white supremacist.
Like, he knows he has such a strong base with them.
And wasn't his father part of the KKK?
Really?
I've read it in a number of articles. I won't make a claim, but I've read it a lot, and it's not very
Oh my
amazing.
God, I had no idea.
Yeah, he comes from a very interesting family.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, my worry is that his appeal to violent racists is very blatant. It's not even like coded right now. It's not even coded. He said, stand by and stand back. And the Proud Boys tweeted and were like, oh my God, I love Trump. Thank you so much for inspiring us, or whatever they said.
Yeah, on their private social media accounts, because they've gotten kicked off of many of these, they called it historic. That's inspirational. Like, just his repeated refusal to condemn these white supremacist groups just empowers them and kind of shows them that they are having a place in our government.
And I think he responded to his comment today. There's a video out.
Oh, really?
Should I play that?
Sure.
Saya, there's literally a video of Trump just saying the Proud Boys need to just let law enforcement handle it, do all of that. I think it's so funny. So I'm going to play it. Hold on.
Awesome. Oh, goodness.
I don't know who the Proud Boys are. I mean, you'll have to give me a definition because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work. Law enforcement will do the work more and more. As people see how bad this radical liberal Democrat movement is and how weak, the law enforcement's going to come back stronger and stronger. But again, I don't know who Proud Boys are, but whoever they are, they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
I think him saying that law enforcement is going to get stronger and stronger.
That is so frightening.
I think that in itself says a lot. And
that's a threat.
It is. It literally is.
I mean, we've seen, this might be a little bit off topic in terms of the debate, but throughout history, the function of policing in the United States has largely been to silence the voices of people who somehow threaten the institutions in place. Mm-hmm. We've seen it during the labor riots in Lawrence, Massachusetts, when they brought in all of these police officers to quell some workers. We've seen it against indigenous communities. And for him to say, when talking about the Proud Boys, to again bring up, what do you call them, like the liberal radicals?
Yeah,
something like that?
Yeah, liberal radicals.
Like, as that's the major threat. I mean, it might be the major threat to the institutions that you want to see in place, but the issue at hand is people are asking you to condemn white supremacists. And again,
he brings up law enforcement and he refuses to condemn white supremacy.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
If you can vote for him after that. Anyways, to move on to our last topic of climate change. This issue was not included in the original lineup, and I was shocked to see that, because we really need bold action for climate justice in this moment right now, as we all know. We needed it desperately 40 years ago, and we need it even more desperately today, and our government and our policies aren't reflecting that whatsoever. As Moderator Walz presented to Trump, over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records.
Trump maintained that the people are happy because business is booming. But I want to ask, what people exactly? Mm-hmm. The rich people. He keeps bringing up business. The economy. Even brought up, I brought back football.
I brought back.
And I'm just like, who are you benefiting besides people that look like you and people that are as rich as you?
Absolutely. Like, do you think that people in California are thrilled because business is booming? Like,
no.
What does that mean to someone whose house is getting burned down, whose house is getting flooded, who's been displaced, who can't find jobs in their community? Like, it's so selfish, and it just shows, like, he has no sense of what really needs to happen in terms of climate policies. And even if he does have a sense, he's not willing to take those steps whatsoever.
Do you think this is like an act? Do you think he's no person can be this, I'm trying not to be rude, no person can be this not smart.
Yep, that's a good way to put it. I do think in many ways it's a strategy. I'm not saying that I think he's some sort of genius, but I think tactically he was super successful in the first election because he presented himself as an outsider, and he keeps doing that. When Wallace was bringing up, like, you're not, like you said, like, the science doesn't know, he's repeatedly questioning people who are advising him. He's not listening to the professionals in our government. And so he's still trying to present himself as an outsider, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. I think that's a very smart tactic for him. So I think, even though I really don't know honestly what he believes, but he's willing to do ridiculous things in order to maintain the power that he sees as necessary.
I mean, there are videos of him, like, from years ago, literally saying women deserve the right to abortion.
I've seen that.
And that, like, he was a literal, like, Democrat before.
Right, he was registered.
And said that Republicans, if he was ever to run for president, that Republicans are the stupidest of the bunch. Yeah. And that if he was ever to run, he would run as a Republican and appeal to them.
I didn't think about that, but I remember seeing that video. Wow.
It's honestly, like, I want to know what his true motives are. Because, like, I know power, but, like, power for what? What does he want to accomplish?
Oh, I don't even want to know. I don't want to see his end game. I really don't. Like, if we can just end it here, it's already, the damage has been terrible.
It's about to be irreversible.
Exactly.
Especially with environment.
The environment. Like, we really need him out as soon as possible.
If they can, like, lock him up. Oh, Saya, you know one thing we haven't talked about? I think the audience probably expected us to talk about this.
Oh, no.
His taxes.
Oh, goodness!
How could we forget?
Yeah, so that is a very fun topic because Wallace was like, hey, Trump. Not in this language. This is my own language. But he's like, pretty much, how much did you pay in federal income taxes your first and second years as president? And Trump was like,
millions.
I pay millions of dollars.
Millions.
And so then Wallace was like, so what about that $750 thing? Like what's up with that? And Trump was like, actually, no, it's millions of dollars.
And my taxes are getting worked on. They'll be released soon.
Millions. We were talking in Supa Finance today about how long does it take to get tax returns. Not that long. Definitely not 4 years. People have been asking and asking. Is it a coincidence why they're not out yet? No. Nobody thinks so.
He doesn't pay taxes.
That is amazing.
You think a president accusing people of socialism would actually pay his taxes?
Oh my God, you're so...
But he's the actual socialist here. He's a socialist king.
Wow, what a god.
Yes.
Icon of our generation. That's amazing. He pays a fraction of what, like, a teacher would pay.
My mom pays more than him.
That, like, see, he is a billionaire. And he is the president. And he's blatantly breaking the law.
You know what I just realized? Girls spend more on, like, tampons and pads a year than Trump actually spends on his taxes.
Oh my God. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, for him, especially for someone like him, $750, that's a penny. That's less than a penny.
I mean, unless he's not actually a billionaire. I don't think he
Plot twist.
Yeah, I think he's losing a lot of money. He's like $400 million in debt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not ever going to a Trump hotel. Unless it's to, like, TP it or something.
Near a Trump hotel.
That's disgusting.
If I'm going to a Trump hotel, it's to TP it or, like,
exactly.
Like, just, like, protest in front of it or anything like that.
Yeah, go eat lunch for free and, like, leave. Oh, anyways, back to climate change. So, Sandra, do you want to talk a little bit about what Biden was saying?
So, Biden asserted that his climate plan is not the Green New Deal. Something else I really like that he did, because he can't really profess support for a plan that's not his. He professed support for his Biden plan, or whatever it's called, and really like that because, once again, appealing to moderates and Republicans. Something about the Green New Deal is that a lot of people don't really understand how it works. They don't understand that to implement the Green New Deal is less expensive than not implementing it. They get thrown off by it's trillions of dollars, we can't do it. But it's like, less money, you don't die, your children don't die, your children's children can actually have children, and they won't die. So what really is the problem here? Why is it so hard to implement? And it's because you're going to get into that right now. It takes these rich people, these people in power like the Koch brothers and stuff, and it deplatforms them a little bit. They have less influence in what happens with their companies and all that pretty stuff that they like to flaunt around and use to display their power.
Absolutely, because they're the people, as you said, who have been benefiting from our government not acting on this crisis so far. And it would really shift the power dynamics. It would provide so many more jobs. It would, as you said, defund from many industries, like fossil fuel industries. Many large corporations would change how they have to do things, but it's not an option at this point. It's not fair that a super tiny percentage get to control policies in order to keep things going in a way that's profitable for them, when the vast majority of the world, especially the global south as we're seeing now, are experiencing devastating effects of climate injustice. We're seeing this across our country too. People in low-income communities of color are far more likely to face effects of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these people deserve a voice in determining how these climate policies get written out. And up until this point, they've been completely excluded.
Mm-hmm. You're so right.
So overall, this debate, it was a mess, as we know. It was less of a debate of ideas, and it was more of a schoolyard fight, I'd say, instigated by the school bully. For me,
the bully being Trump.
The bully being Trump. Just in case people needed that clarification. Like, as a viewer, I can't imagine how Trump could gain more support from his performance on Tuesday. I feel like people, if you already supported him, for whatever reasons, that might affirm things for you. I don't know. I just feel like as an adult, if I were an adult watching that, I don't know how I could be like, wow, I'm going to vote for that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, as I briefly mentioned earlier, I think the one thing he did well tactically was trying to maintain his outsider appeal, because he repeatedly disagreed with his lead health officials, and he also painted Biden as an ineffective Washington insider. But overall, his performance demonstrated like the urgency that he feels to upend the race, because he's consistently trailing in polls, and he went into this debate as the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
He was constantly interjecting, constantly presenting misinformations, and was heckling Biden so hard.
Oh my God.
Like, it was not only unpresidential, but it was immature and disrespectful, just as a practice. We can't have someone with that level of uncaring about the issues facing our country in the office ever again, period.
Exactly. And going back to the bully point that you made, the amount of times that Trump interrupted Biden, the amount of times that Trump argued with the moderator was actually insane. And something that genuinely brought me to tears, and I was texting you about this, I was genuinely crying, was he brought up Biden's son.
I know.
Calling him a loser after he served the country, the military that he thinks need to be funded more than $700 billion.
Oh my God.
He called him a loser for dying from cancer.
I think he was confusing Hunter and Beau too. Like, he couldn't discern which one was which. I felt like I was like, wait, which one of Biden's sons do you think you're talking about at this time? Yeah, it was so disrespectful. I don't want to quote this directly because I'm not sure, but I remember Biden saying, like, it's not about family, it's not about our families, it's about the voters, it's about the American people. It's like Trump was trying to bring a personal issue and create like a petty situation.
He made the whole thing personal, and he started saying that, I remember this comment that he made, I can't exactly remember like the real words, but he said that, don't even use the word smart with me.
Yes.
You couldn't even remember the university you went to. You didn't go to University of Delaware. You graduated like the last in your class or something like that. And that also made me cry. And it's just like,
it's actual.
How can you watch that? How can also children watch that, and actual adults watch that, and not think that there's something inherently wrong with our country, and that the direction our country is moving in isn't exactly promising to either scary. White people or black people, any race really. Because at the end of the day, like, I know Trump is appealing to white people, especially white males, white straight males, but I think he's gonna do something just not in anyone's favor besides his. He's using their support, and he's gonna just abuse his power in ways that we can't even imagine if he's elected 4 more years. And forget about American democracy or American republic, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to be here, even like the 5th year he's president. Like, that's...
And even if he's not elected, like at the end they were talking about this, like, what are you going to do if Biden wins? Like, are you going to question the validity of the vote? They were discussing that. And Trump was like, well, you know, my people are going to be in the streets. And I'm like, what do you mean, your people? You're gonna have the Proud Boys coming into our neighborhoods? Like, it's so threatening. It's so undemocratic.
Oh, I mean, he's not democratic.
Yeah, democratic, period. It's just like, I remember when we were little and we'd be like, oh, I want to be president when I grew up. Like, it's something that we looked up to as a profession, And imagine now, as you said, like a little kid watching this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like watching a bully, the most powerful man in the world, bullying someone else. He's ignoring the questions. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Biden had a perfect performance. I'm really not. But Trump was exceptionally terrible.
But one thing I really like that Biden did was his response to Trump's personal attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was just like calmness, really. He wasn't quick to anger, and he also refuted Trump's comments with like actual facts, saying this is what happened. You told people to inject blah blah in their veins bleach in their veins in order to like counteract COVID. You told, like, I can't even remember all these comments, but it was a lot. But he actually came back with like real things that Trump has done, and Trump just said, "Well, what would you have done? You wouldn't have done anything."
Right.
He's like,
yeah, and he speaks in such definitive terms. Like when they were talking about the Supreme Court, Trump was like, "Oh well, if the Democrats are here, if you were here, you definitely would have done it much faster than us." And I'm like, it's such a dangerous generalization to make. And he did that throughout the debate. He's just about presenting misinformation and trying to provoke Biden. Mm-hmm. And I would say like the one thing that Biden, I would suggest to him, that sounds very, what's the word? Presumptive of me. But like, I think like the one thing I was noticing is like, in the beginning, he was doing better, but then he started to kind of get baited by Trump when he was being provocative, or when he was just like presenting blatant misinformation.
True. I take back my quick to anger comment.
It was just, it was at some point.
Yeah,
right?
It was he said shut up to him twice.
And he called him a clown and a racist.
The racist part I love.
I mean,
love that.
All of it is true. He should shut up. He is a clown and he is a racist. But people will hold on to that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think it really is like in Trump's favor when it gets into this petty back and forth, because this is what he does best. He's very loud. He's very aggressive. And I really think that Biden has to avoid that as much as possible. Because also, as we know, Biden isn't really known for his public speaking abilities or like ability to think on his feet. Yeah, in
the beginning I was getting a little scared because he was talking super, super slow. And I was like, you have to get all your points in before the time is up. But I mean, he came through. Came through for all of us.
He really did come through. I agree.
Yeah. Saya.
Oh no.
One amazing part was Trump saying that Kenosha's, Portland sheriff or something, one of the city sheriffs, that he supported Trump and stuff like that. Goodness. And Trump was like just, loving that. And he kept saying it. And then a few hours later, the sheriff actually sent out a tweet and he was like, I do not and I will never support Trump.
Oh, goodness. It was so funny. No, this is really off topic, but like at the RNC, I can't remember what band it is, but like sometimes at these like Trump conventions or like at the RNC, they'll play music, and then the artist will like tweet out, they're like, I do not support this. Please do not use my music ever again. Oh, thank God for that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, let's like, how about not being associated with blatant racists?
How about not being a blatant racist?
Period. Oh goodness. Well, thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that debate reflection, and we hope that you stay well, and see you next time on Let's Talk About It.
And don't forget to tune in to the debate next week with Kamala and Mike.